All right, welcome along. My name's Bosh. This is Bosh's Ableton Beginner Bits, and today we're going to be taking a look at making a mixdown and a real brief look at the mastering process. Now, before I start this video, I'm going to stress this highly. This is beginners mastering and mixdown and mastering. Beginners, right? So I'm not going into in-depth things. I might do some things when you watch this and you know how to master. You might look at this and say, what the fuck is he doing? This is my starter tips for mastering, yeah? We're not really mastering, we're showing you the process of how you get to the point to master, how you can create a final WAV or MP3 product musically to then take and test on other speakers and things like that. So I'm going to get straight into it, but before I start, I just want to specify that it is for beginners. I've just got a feeling the comments are going to absolutely light up on this because what I've put together here is like the most basic approach possible, yeah? We're not going into good mastering, we're just going into how to master, right? If that makes sense. So, let's get straight into it. I've got one of my tunes here. It's called Plinko at the moment. I'll play it a little bit. It goes like this. Alright, so it's a bit of a dubstep mashup, and I'm going to go through step by step the things I would do to start firstly creating a mixdown of your project and then creating the master. So the first thing I'm going to do, what I want to do is create a lot of what they call headroom. So I'm going to be creating some space in this mix. So when I play this track normally, let me just play it from the start again. So you see there, if you look at your meter here on the side, my voice is pushing it a little bit up. So if you just look at the meter on the side here, on the master, it's hitting somewhere between -6 and 0. Now, in the mastering process, we use compression, which means we're squashing everything together, and it kind of brings up all the quiet things into the space of the loud things. So what you want to do is leave what they call headroom, and that means it's space for the compressor to do its work. And it means it can bring everything up sort of into each other's space. The bass can be brought up into where the snares and things are, without one of them muffling the other one. It gives them space to move around. So headroom is a super important thing on a mix. So I used to do it to -6 dB, so I'd try and make my track peak at -6, and then that means I have 6 decibels of headroom to play around with for the compression. I've started doing it between -10 and -12 now. I tend to try and make it hit between 12 and 10, just because again it gives it more headroom and it gives that compressor more space to do what it's supposed to do. So this track at the moment is mixed relatively, for me, it's mixed all right, it's not too bad. There's nothing immediately jumping out at me that I think I want to change. So now all I'm going to do, Control and A, I need to deselect my mic channel because that's my streaming channel, ignore that tip. Control and A, this will select all your tracks and all your groups. Now it won't select the tracks that are in the groups. Now this is a very important thing. Your group should be set, the levels should be set to where you want it, so that the final grouping track, so this one here for the bass, these should be mixed properly so that you're happy with the output level of this group channel, because now the only thing you're going to change is the group channel. You're not going to change anything else within the channel, like inside the group. So what I'm actually going to minimize that just to make it a bit easier to watch, to look at. So again, click on any track, Control and A. I'm just going to deselect my mic, but you can ignore that. And then what I'm going to do is play the track, keep playing it, and then bring the volume down until it hits between -10 and -12. And the only thing I need to do that is click on one of them, click on one of these sliders, and because I've selected them all, they're all going to move at the same pace. So just keep pressing the down arrow. Still a bit high there. Now you can use the round edged meters, that's where the audio's hitting. So if I click on this, it'll reset it. Obviously my voice is triggering it. All right. Let's play again. I'm going to, without talking, I'm going to click that, and then I'm going to play again. Yeah, 8.42 on that. Luckily, I'm not going to set it off with my voice. So that's hitting at minus 8.42, so we can bring it down a little bit further. Oh, make sure you've selected them. I need to reselect everything. Click this again. I'm going to click on this kick drum. I'm going to hold shift and I'm going to move it down by 4 or 5. Alright. What shift does in that case is it stops, instead of moving down in whole decibels, it moves down in 1/10 of a decibel. So it'll be 0.1 of a decibel that it moves down when you hold shift and click. Let's unclick this and see where we're hitting again. And that's exactly where I want it. That's hitting between minus 10.8 and I think the lowest point were like 11 something. So that's exactly where we want it to be. And that's the best place for it. Click in any one of your spare squares on here just to unselect all your tracks. And now if I expand this bass track, you'll see that none of these levels have been affected. They're all still up at the top where they're supposed to be, where I set them originally, and it's only the group channel that's moved up and down. So that's what I do to set the basis for my Mixdown. And what I'm going to do now, there's 2 different methods you could do a Mixdown. Method 1 is you export a WAV of this with no mastering on it, no effect, no extra effects or anything, just as it is here. Export that as a WAV, drag that back into Ableton, and then master that. Now, I'm going to do that in a different video. This one, I'm going to do the most basic way, the simplest, quickest way. And that is mastering on the project and then exporting it. Some people are going to say, you don't do that, do not do that. This is a beginner's starting point. This is something you can try. If you don't like it, do the other way. I'll do the other way in another video. So this way, we're going to make the master on your original project. So the first thing I'm going to do is click on my master channel. Ignore this plugin because that's for streaming purposes. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you my basic mastering chain. And I use this on all my tracks. So any of my tracks out there, if you like them, how they sound, the mastering on them and that, this is what it's from, apart from a few that other people have mastered, but the majority of my tunes I do myself. So the first thing you're going to want is a compressor. So we're going to go to Dynamics, just get the regular compressor and drag it onto your master channel. Now we're going to get EQ8. I've got a little thing of notes up here, so I'm just, that's why if you see me looking up like this every so often. Let's put EQ8. All right, and then we're going to get a limiter. So we need to go Dynamics, limiter. Now I'm going to group all these. So click on the compressor and hold Shift. Click on the EQ8 and then click on the limiter. Control and G. And now you've got your mastering in a nice little group there. I need to put this before the streaming. There we go. So you guys are getting the effect of that. So let's play the tune. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through each of these, the effects on the mastering chain, and sort of show you what each one of them does. So let's play the tune. Now, my compressor settings, I would have... My watch is going off. My compressor settings, I would set it to have the makeup gain turned on. I usually set the ratio to 5/1. And then it's just a game of pulling down the threshold bar. So let's play. And then while I play it, I'm going to pull down the threshold. And I want you to see what happens in this mastering channel, yeah? What happens to the overall level. Remember, we've set it to about around -12. Watch what happens. I'm just going to take this threshold and increase it, or reduce it even. All right. Turn that off. All right, so you can see what's happened. Could you see how it started to push? Oh, let me just turn this off. There we go. You can hear how it got louder, but you could also see and hear how quieter elements started to get louder and get pushed up into the mix, and the bass, you could hear it sort of started ducking and moving around. So if you've got bass and then something hits up through the bass, it's going to make that bass duck a little bit, because now everything's battling to try and get space. One thing I would do to stop that happening is, when you're setting your threshold, still leave a little bit of space at the top of the mix. So you're going to be looking at your meter on the master channel here, and you just want to leave a little gap, so there's just a little bit of space where that music's moving in 1 or 2 decibels, so there's a bit of a gap. All right, I'll take that off because that's going to make my voice mega loud. So the next thing I would do is EQ. And I'm going to turn the compressor off for now. Now, the reason I had to put the EQ after the compressor is that when you compress it, it's going to cause changes to happen sonically. So the best thing would to do to compress and then re-EQ to, you know, alter some of the things that have now come through with the compression. So I'm going to turn on my EQ. Let's expand this area a little bit. Now, I'm only going to do a couple of things, basics. First thing, I'm going to do a steep high pass, and I'm going to put that at around 30 hertz. Yeah, nothing going on under 50 hertz really, so I think I'm going to take this up to 40. Yeah. So all that's done is cut off the very, very low end, the muddy areas that you're not going to hear. I can see where my bass line's hitting. I can see that it's hitting, the lowest point is at about 40 hertz. So I can cut off everything below that. 50, did I say 50? There, you see that little peak there? 50. That's the lowest where the bass goes. So that's all I'm going to do. The next thing I would do for this would be to put a small high shelf. I think it's called a high shelf. Yeah, we're going to just put a little lift on the top end. Yeah, just that. Again, I am definitely not saying that this is for any tune. Like, this doesn't fit for every tune, but this is just the basics of what I would do. Now, something a bit strange I'm going to do here. I'm going to take this number 3 EQ position, and I'm going to move it around, swing it around a lot, and see where the hit point is for my snare. Because I always like to make the snare pop through a little bit. See, I think that's just below it. So then I'm just going to increase the Q. The Q is the sort of the angle of the point. So that's got a big Q. If I put it down to a small Q, it means it's wider. And I'm just going to put that to plus 1 dB. Not much. Yeah. And that's about all I'm going to do here for EQ. I'm not, again, like I said before, I'm not going to go crazy in depth with everything and how to do, because every track's different, everyone's ears are different. But that's kind of where I'd start with my EQing from a master. And then limiter. Limiter, I wouldn't do much with the limiter. That's just to keep everything in control right at the very end. So let's do the makeup gain. Now, I'm going to come back from the mic a bit because that's increased my voice loads. Now watch what happens when I increase the gain on the limiter. Yeah, so you'll see that I think I'm going to leave that compressor on now. You'll see that the channel never goes above 0. That's because of the limiter. So I can push this limiter really hard, and it'll make everything loud and push it up into that top thing, but it'll never pass wherever you set. I've set that at minus 0.3 decibels, so it'll never go above that. can hear how it starts to distort. Yeah. So just be careful with that. I just use that as like a wrapping up at the end, just to stop anything sneaking above that 0 dB line or that minus 0.3 dB. And I mean, that's about it for the actual process of mastering. Alright. So now the next thing you're going to want to do, I'm going to leave that mastering on so I can come away a bit from the mic because I'm compressed into there now. So the next thing you want to do is actually export what you've made here. I'm going to find that what you want to do is set a loop. The way you decide what the mastering exports is you set this loop. So I want to find the end of my track. Looks like that's the end of my tune here. Now that's all well and good, but let's listen how this ends. So you can see how there's some reverb tail there. There's some end, there's some effects that carry on playing, things like that. It'll be the release of some of the synths and stuff. If I leave my loop end here, I'm not going to get all that. It's just going to cut off dead. So what I'm going to do is play it again, and I'm going to watch and pay attention to see where the reverb stops. So it stopped about now. I'd take it, just to be even, I'd take it 4 bars off the end. So then now you can hear that all that reverb will be that'll be included in the end mixdown. So that's all going to be included in there. So that's the first thing. You need to set your loop. You don't need to actually turn the loop on or anything like that. All I do is click on it, and it means that that is the area that Ableton's going to mix down for you into a final MP3. So that's important, leaving reverb at the end. Now, from here, I'm going to click on the loop, go to File, Export Audio and Video. Right, and then we've got this menu comes up. I'm hoping my audio it still works. This menu it looks a bit more complicated than it needs to be, or than it is. It's not that hard to use. I'm going to go through each of these settings how I have them. Now, I always mix down from the master, but this is useful if you are mixing down stems for someone else, or you want individual tracks or anything like that. You can choose what you mix down from. You can either mix down from the return channels, so if you want to mix down your effects separately, you can do that. You can do all the individual tracks, so you'll get 16, 17 stems, or however many tracks you have, you'll get that many stems. Selected tracks, so you can go through, hold shift and click on the tracks that you want to use, and so on. Then there are all the individual tracks. So I'm going to have it on master because I want to export the final master project. Render start is the start, 111. Render end, or render length, is how many bars it is from the start of your loop here to the end of that loop. Rendering options include return and master effects. Now that's turned off because we're recording from the master anyway, but if I turn this to selected tracks only, then I can decide to use the return and master effects, but we're not. We're doing master. Render as loop, I think that's something for if you're using it back in Ableton. It'll automatically drag it in as a loop. Don't need to worry about that. Convert to mono, I tend not to worry about that. That's a bit further on if you want to be doing mono masters and things like that to check that you're not going to lose any stereo information. You'd export it as a mono thing, but that's different. Normalize, I tend not to do because I feel like that's been done in the mastering. Normalize, I would normally do for raw audio files with no mastering on. But where I want everything to be a better volume and a more matching volume. Analysis file, yeah, that's already on. Sample rate. Now, some people say that you should export your master at 48,000 hertz. That's probably true. Again, like I said, this is a completely beginner thing. But for me, when I've exported some WAVs and then I've gone to play them at exported WAVs at 48,000 hertz, and then I've tried to play them on CD decks to listen to them in different situations they don't play. So I always do 44.1 or 44,100 hertz. That's what I always do. Come at me again in the comments if you've got any different information on that. That's absolutely fine. That this is just how I like to do it. Another thing I would probably do is if you're doing the other method that I spoke about, which is where you take your mix down, don't master it, just export it. I'd export that as a 48,000 hertz, then drag it back into Ableton to master it, and then export that WAV at 44.1. It's a minefield. PCM is the file type that you're going to do. So I'm doing WAV, and this is like the high quality audio here. I always do bit depth at 16 bits. Now MP3, I would turn this off for now, because all that will do is create the identical file as an MP3. Now, I wouldn't bother doing this until you're happy with the final master, and then do a WAV and an MP3. Otherwise, you're just going to end up with a load of MP3s sat on your hard drive that you've forgotten about. It's inevitable. It happens to everyone. So I wouldn't take out an MP3 until you've got the final WAV sorted. And then video, we don't need to worry about that. And that's about it really. From there, you just click export, pick somewhere that you want to save your file, and it'll export it for you. And then go listen to it on other things, go listen to it in your car, on a CD player, on headphones somewhere, anything like that. And then once you've listened to it, you've decided, oh, this doesn't sound right, that doesn't sound right. Come back in, change something, mix it down again, take it and listen to it. One thing I would recommend is when you're mastering or doing mix downs or whatever you're doing, I would save each version as a new file. So do it mix down version 1, version 1.5, 2, whatever your best method for sort of ordering all this, that's what I'd do. And that's pretty much it. I think that's about it. Let's see if there's anything else I can address, but I think that's about it, to be honest. Yeah. Sometimes, this is just a little extra thing, sometimes I like to put a reverb in. I don't have it on my standard mastering chain, but I would put that before the compressor. Oh dear, I didn't consider this. And so this sounds like an alright room. I'm going to tighten it up a little bit. A little bit more. A little bit more. That's too much. About there. Sounds nice. Let's check the... No. Check. 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 And then I've taken that right off. I've reduced the dry down to 0. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put it to about 5. Check. Check. Hello. Maybe 3. So it's there. You can still hear it on my voice, but it's really far in the background, so it sounds like the room's not giving me mega reverb. That will just gel everything together a little bit. You probably won't be able to notice if I play the tune, but let's have a listen. Let's listen to it fully wet. You're getting that sound really low behind everything, so it's just kind of brings everything together. It's a bit hard to explain, but I do like to put a little bit of reverb on there as well, just a tiny bit. You're barely going to notice it really in the final master. But again, it just gels everything together. Makes everything sound like it's in the same room, I guess. But I think that's it. I'm going to leave it there. That is my mastering basics, Mixdown and mastering basics. As I said at the start of the video, I fully expect people to come in the comments and be like, how can you tell people to do it this way? Oh, what are you doing that? I don't do that. I don't like this. Whatever, that's cool. This is just how to get a basic mix down. Otherwise, if you like what I'm doing here on the channel, if you've got any requests for videos, all that business, get in touch, comments, subscribe, share, like, everything like that. It's all helping. The channel is growing week by week. So I want to thank everyone who watches, everyone who suggests new videos, because you guys are where I get my video suggestions from. But I'm going to leave it there. My name's Bosh. This has been Bosh's Ableton Beginner Bits, mastering Mixdown, and I will see you next time.